Last time I was telling you the little unknown title of King Charles III being Keeper of the Cows that was given to him in Tunisia. I believe I said 2011, and He Who Makes Cows Cry is part of that title. So I thought that was very interesting, considering that the red heifer ceremony is going to be such a huge event according to the ultra-Orthodox rabbis in Israel. They are the ones that want the third temple built. They are the ones that want the red heifer ceremony to go through. And they're the ones that have been trying to put forth discriminatory bills and laws, particularly against Jewish women there in the land of Israel. But something else that you need to know about King Charles III was that they just had these Scottish games called the May Games. It's M-E-Y. And I wanted to read this to you because it's got an interesting connection to red heifers. His Royal Highness, who was then the Prince of Wales, has visited the castle of May to view the herd of native Angus cattle introduced by the Queen Mother that now supply some of the highest quality beef in UK supermarkets. The Prince, alongside farm managers Sandy and Danny McCarthy and farm consultant Malcolm McRae, embarked on a short tour of the castle grounds and the adjacent Longo farm in Sainsbury District. Judith Batchelor and Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society President Paul Jeans and Chief Executive Barry Turner. The Sainsbury family previously owned a herd of AA cattle located in Balmoral in Moray that were registered under the herd name Kinnermoney. The herd was renowned for producing quality AA beef and was sold in Sainsbury stores. But in 1983, the Sainsbury family sold the Kinnermoney herd. In 2012, Sainsbury's partnered with the Queen Elizabeth, Castle of May Trust, and AACS to restore its original herd of native Angus cattle under the Kinnermoney name. As a result of this, Sainsbury's reintroduced the Kinnermoney beef to its shelves on a trial basis in April of 2019. Mr. McRae is the farming consultant who advises on the management of the herd and the flock of North Country Cheviot sheep in Longo Farm, he said. The AA cattle at the Castle of May are much in demand, and we are proud that its bloodline contribute to the superb Kinnermoney beef product being enjoyed across the country. Sandy and Danny McCarthy, the farm managers here, work very hard to ensure the highest quality among our livestock. It is a credit to them, as well as to the commitment by the Queen Mother, who's of course passed away, and the Prince of Wales, who's now King Charles III, that our purebred herd is recognized as a standard bearer for premium beef. Miss Batchelor, director of Sainsbury Brands, said, "This is a milestone moment in Sainsbury history. As we celebrate our 150th birthday, we are also reestablishing our AA credentials with the reintroduction of Kinnermoney Aberdeen Angus beef into our stores. The revival of Kinnermoney beef wouldn't have been possible without the help of His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, and the Castle of May Trust." So he revived, King Charles III, who was then the Prince of Wales, revived this superior quality Scottish Angus cow. Now, it provides the best beef for the entire UK. And it was in 2012, during a visit to the Castle of May, that we were first introduced to the AACS by His Royal Highness. Now, after 6 years of breeding and careful selection, we have a stud of Kinnermoney AA bulls producing genetics that we are truly proud of, and in turn produce a distinctive range of AA beef for our customers. Thanks to Longo Farm for the hard work and dedication that they have put in over the last 6 years, and also ABP Food Group, who have prudently managed the rearing and growing of the Kinnermoney animals to make this a reality. It really is a very special moment for us all. Mr. Turner said the AACS is very pleased to be involved with Sainsbury's and the Queen Elizabeth Castle of May Trust on this project. We work with our many partners through performance, recording, and improvement to select for the best characteristics that are within the genetic makeup of Aberdeen Angus cattle that deliver the ultimate beef eating experience for consumers. Now, this is the Scottish Aberdeen Angus cattle. They're very distinct looking. So when they said the AACS, that is the Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society. And guess who is a patron of the Scottish Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society but King Charles III? And why do I find that important? It's because the red heifers that came from Texas, that they're waiting to see if they will qualify for the red heifer sacrifice, they actually are red cows. So King Charles III just went to May Castle, and they had these Scottish games there where they have, all kinds of brute strength type of games, like they wear the kilt and they do all of these Scottish things, wearing their tartans, and they play in these sports games, tug of war, and he handed the tug of war trophy to the winning team and took a shot of whiskey. So it was said in that first sentence that His Royal Highness, now King Charles III, then the Prince of Wales, has visited the Castle of May to view the herd of native Angus cattle introduced by the Queen Mother that now supplies some of the highest quality beef in UK supermarkets. So, the Jews are looking for certain qualifications for the red heifer. They had these red cows at the Highland Games. So this is a unique cattle breed, the Scottish Highland cow. And this lady, Melissa K. Norris, writes, Scottish Highland cows are a very unique breed. For starters, they're known to be exceptionally friendly and gentle cows. They originated in Scotland, and their horns can grow up to 6 feet. They can thrive in various climates, especially cold climates, and on average they live longer than most other cattle, as their lifespan is between 15 to 20 years. Because our cows are new to us, even though they're known for their gentle disposition, I recommend keeping a good distance and being cautious until you know the temperament of each animal. They have wonderful milk that's rich in butter, fat, protein, and calcium. Their milk will make incredible butter, yogurt, and cheese. Scottish Highlanders breed at 2 years, not 1.5, as most other cattle do. But honestly, have you seen a photo of a Scottish Highlander calf? They look like teddy bears. They are good for beef. Scottish Highlanders are known to have pretty lean beef. The meat has a marbling to it. That they are exceptional and much hardier foragers because they will eat blackberry vines, which, by the way, are full of little thorns. Poison ivy they will eat, honeysuckle vines, and if they can reach it, they will eat it. They are great for restoring pastures or wooded areas as well, and they'll clean up entire woods that other cattle may not survive in. It says Scottish Highlanders take an extra year to mature compared to other cattle, so they're ready to butcher in about 3 years instead of the average 2 for other breeds. It says, what could be more Scottish than Scottish Highlander cattle? That's why Miles Smith farmed Scottish Highlander cattle, also known as Highland coos, were there. Highland cattle are a heritage breed, so they have them at these Highland games because they originate in Scotland. So they're bred to withstand the intemperate conditions in Scotland, where farmers keep them to produce milk and meat. Also called a fold, Queen Elizabeth kept Highland cattle at Balmoral Castle. So that is where King Charles III likes to visit, of course. Our Highlanders were all born in the USA, but the first Highland cattle were imported to the United States in the late 1890s. Highland cattle have an unusual double coat of fur. On the outside is the oily outer hair, the longest of any cattle breed, covering a downy undercoat, making them well suited to the cold and snow of the Scottish Highlands and New Hampshire. So here's what you need to know about this special Scotland Aberdeen Angus group of cattle that are up there at Castlemaine and that the Queen had at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. When you look at Red Angus, the Red Angus is an international breed of beef cattle characterized by a reddish-brown coat color. It derives from the Scottish Aberdeen Angus population, and apart from the coat color, is identical to it. Red Angus are registered separately from Black Angus cattle in Australia, Canada, and the United States. So the Red Angus is connected to the red heifer, which is connected to the Scottish Aberdeen Angus cattle that King Charles III visited at the May Games at Castlemaine, and the Queen Mother was responsible for that herd there. The Scottish Angus is usually black, but red individuals occur, and this may be the consequence of crossbreeding in the 18th century of the small Scottish cattle with larger English Longhorn stock aimed at increasing their draft power. In the United States, these red individuals could, until 1917, be registered in the herd book of the American Angus Association. From about 1945, some herds consisting only of red-coated stock were formed. In 1954, a breeders' association, the Red Angus Association of America, was established at a meeting in Fort Worth, Texas. Well, guess who's from there, baby? Yours truly. That's where I was born. I was born where the Red Angus Association of America was established. How about that? So I have a connection to the red heifers. Wow, I didn't know that. The registered population in 2008 numbered about 47,000 head, making it the 5th beef breed by number in the United States. And it lists the different kinds: American Angus, Charolais, Hereford, and Simmental. The Red Angus derives from the Scottish Aberdeen Angus population. So that's the one that King Charles III is a patron of in Scotland. Don't you think that he's going to have something to do with that red heifer ceremony? I do. I think they're going to recognize this, especially with having that special unknown title, Keeper of the Cows. And here is the former Prince Charles standing at the Castle May with some of the Scottish Aberdeen Angus cattle. Now these are black that he's standing with. Historically speaking, the Scottish Angus is usually black, but red individuals occur. So you might be interested to know, what breed of cattle is the red heifer? The red Angus. The Institute has been raising funds in order to use modern technology to produce a red heifer that's genetically based on the red Angus. Angus cattle, known as Scottish Aberdeen Angus, are a breed of cattle commonly used in beef production, like the top quality beef. They were developed from cattle native to the counties of Aberdeenshire and Angus in Scotland, and are known as Aberdeen Angus in most parts of the world. The Scotsman report says, following King Charles's ascension to the throne, his charity patronages are under review. However, he has been patron of Scottish organizations, including the Scottish Chamber Orchestra, the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, the Scottish Wildlife Trust, Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society. That's it. That is the cattle that produce the red cows, and Glasgow School of Art and the Gordon Highlanders Museum. So that puts King Charles III, as a major player, a person that is a patron of the Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society, of the red cows in Scotland. And some of them are black, of course, but they do produce this beautiful coat of fur. And though his partnerships are under review, his fondness for nature, arts, and culture doesn't stop with patronages. Prints of his watercolor paintings, including of Balmoral, have sold for more than £5,000 since he ascended to king. So this was just published on August 6th, and it said, "Great Scott, King Charles is all smiles as he wears his favorite kilt to attend his first Highland Games since becoming monarch." So King Charles III has a very keen interest in this heritage cattle of Scotland. And, the Queen Mother and Queen Elizabeth were all involved with preserving this special heritage breed of cattle. So get this, the Temple Institute, of course, had initially declared both kosher. This was referring to the red heifers that they had received formerly, but later they were found each to be unsuitable. They found the white hairs on them. So the Institute has been raising funds in order to use modern technology to produce a red heifer that is genetically based on the red Angus. And by definition, a heifer is a young cow, especially one that has not had a calf. There was an article by the New Yorker, of course, it's satire, but forcing the end, it says, and it said, and yet red cattle are not really so unusual in the United States. A breed known as the Red Angus is as red as an Irish setter. What I think is kind of interesting timing about this, and I don't want to get off point, but I wanted to tell you that, you know how it talks about two sets of figs? One set of figs was very good, and the other was very bad, so bad it was rotten. And you know, it talks about the fig tree generation. Well, it just so happens that they found a 3,100-year-old jar full of burnt figs strung together by strings. It was found in Ekron, Holy Land, dated to the 12th century BC, and it was full of burnt figs. Do you think that that could be a sign that something's about to go down, that are bad figs in Israel? I want to share something about these May Highland Games that King Charles III just attended. This is the Prince's Foundation, and it says, Steward the Queen Elizabeth Castle of May Trust. As of 2019, the future of this historic building looks bright. A romantic edifice set on the rugged coastline of Caithness in the northern Highlands of Scotland, the dilapidated Castle of May was purchased in 1952 by the late Queen Mother, following the death of her husband, King George VI. Following its renovation, she holidayed at the castle for almost 50 years, and each August presided over the May Games, which were held in a field close by the event, has since been reborn as the first UK Highland Games to champion war veterans and para-athletes, now attended by His Royal Highness, the Duke of Rothesay. Now, he no longer has that title. That was given to Prince William, but he is King Charles III. And the highlights of that year's events could be seen on his webpage. The stunning property, unsurprisingly, holds great sentimental value for His Royal Highness. Hence, from January 1st of 2019, the Queen Elizabeth Castle of May Trust was to be stewarded by the Prince's Foundation, which was Prince Charles, and current chairman Ash Wyndham has expressed his delight at the opportunity to help manage the transition. So he kind of took it over, I suppose. But the charity will, of course, retain its unique goals: the preservation of buildings and monuments, the promotion of historical and architectural education, the preservation of the Aberdeen Angus breed of cattle, and the championing of wider benefits to the community, while His Royal Highness, the Duke of Rothesay, now King Charles III, and the Prince's Foundation is certain to make the continuation of his grandmother's legacy a priority. His Royal Highness, the Duke of Rothesay, aspires to support the Queen Elizabeth Castle of May Trust into the future, particularly through the work of his charities, explains Robert Lovey, Executive Director of the Prince's Foundation. The plan is to use the skill set and experience of the Prince's Foundation to continue to develop not only the excellent work of the current trustees, but also to build on the Queen Mother's wishes of retaining the unique spirit of the castle, Caithness, the North Highlands, and the local community. The passion to maintain this historic building, it seems, is limitless. These were the words of Nick Scott on theprince'sfoundation.org. So, what if the king was able to provide them with a perfect Scottish Red Angus? What if the 5 from Texas are considered unsuitable if they develop white hairs? These are just a couple of what ifs that I'm pondering in my head. But the Jerusalem Post, of course, aired this story September 20th of 2022. The story from Texas to Israel, red heifers needed for the temple arrived in Israel. And it said 5 perfectly red heifers required for the ritual purification of those who have touched a dead body arrived in Israel from a ranch in Texas that Thursday as the Temple Institute continues preparations to lay the ground for the construction of the third temple in Jerusalem. These are all under 1 year old as of this writing, and if they remain 100% red and avoid any blemishes which would disqualify them, they will each be eligible to be used to create the ashes required by Jewish law to purify those who've been in contact with a dead body, explained the Temple Institute. This level of purification would be needed in order to allow the Kohanim priests to carry out their work in a future temple, and without it they won't be able to. So we know that the prized cattle were immediately transported to Heifer, where they sat in quarantine for no less than 7 days in accordance with the regulations of the Israel Veterinary Authority. After the quarantine, they would be released to 2 separate locations in Israel, one of which will eventually be open to the public. And that's the one at ancient Shiloh, or Shiloh, as they say in Israel. And that's where the tabernacle had been, so the public will be able to visit the red heifers. The heifers will be fed and cared for at these locations until they can be slaughtered and rendered into ashes from their 3rd year onwards. The heifers were located and brought to Israel with the help of the BONEH Israel organization, which involves both Jews and Christians. Byron Stinson, a Texas rancher and a fundraiser and advisor for the organization, raised the cattle. The heifers were greeted by the ceremony at Ben Gurion Airport. We know all of this, and they plan on taking good care of these cattle. But the connection to the Scottish Red Angus cattle that King Charles III is a patron of, you can't tell me he would not take an interest in this red heifer ceremony, especially since the red heifers are Red Angus and genetically from the original Scottish breed of Aberdeen Red Angus. Aretz reported, building a third temple in Jerusalem is the dream for the messianic branches of Judaism and Christianity. But there are snags. One is the deficiency of a pure red heifer for sacrifice. Tradition holds that the heifer must be truly red from head to toe, with no more than 2 black hairs or white hairs on its body. The problem being that such beasts don't exist. Well, they do exist. They're right there in Scotland, and of course this Texas rancher raised some of them. Now Temple Mount devotees hope to circumvent nature by breeding the Red Angus strain of cows in Israel. As the first mention of a red heifer is in the book of Numbers 19 verse 2. This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord hath commanded, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel that they bring thee a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came a yoke. And this is why Jesus said, My yoke is easy and my burden is light, because no blood of bulls, goats, or of a red heifer can take away the uncleanness of people. It's the blood of the Lord God himself, who came to dwell in the flesh as our Yeshua. So The unblemished bovine, the text continues, needs to be ritually slaughtered, burnt to ashes together with cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool. The ashes are then collected, mixed with pure water, and voila, you've got purifying water. And it says the ancient Hebrews were profoundly preoccupied with spiritual purity, and the worst kind of uncleanness was that incurred by handling the dead. A 7-day ritual was needed to purify oneself, which included twice being sprinkled with the purifying water. During the times of the Second Temple, the specifics of the ceremonies involved in the making of the purifying water were highly contested by the Pharisees and Zadokites. That is why the Mishnah, a central book of Jewish law, dating from the period, goes into great detail regarding the red heifer, elaborating on preparation of the purifying water and use thereof. In fact, it devotes a whole tractate to the subject, para, which means cow. The Mishnah tells us that since those involved in the preparation of the purifying water had to be spiritually pure, drastic measures had to be taken. And these measures included rearing priestly children, born into the priestly caste of Kohanim, in a special compound where they would be kept away from all impurity and thus be eligible to participate in the important ceremony. The Mishnah tells us that only 9 red heifers were turned into purifying water, 1 by Moses, 1 by Ezra, 2 each by Simon the Just and Yochanan the high priest, and then by Elionai ben Ha-Cheaf and Hanamel the Egyptian. According to some Jews, the Messiah cannot come and hail the end of days without the third temple arising in Jerusalem. And since the temple cannot be built without proper purification, a red heifer must be found. The Temple Institute, an organization dedicated to preparing the groundwork for the construction of the temple, and they claim in this article it's where the Dome of the Rock is inconveniently standing, but I'm not so sure that he's just saying that. There's a lot of information about it, and I could tell you what the Lord's shown me, but it would take a lot of work to do a video about it. But every few years, a red heifer is announced, but then is rejected due to a non-red hair being found. And some fundamentalist Christians believe that the second coming of Christ, or the Messiah, requires that the temple be rebuilt. Thus, they, too, anticipate the birth of the red heifer as a sign of the coming of the end of days. Anyway, were a cow to be born bright red down to its very last follicle, neither world peace nor Armageddon are likely to ensue overnight. Presumably, some zealous Jews and Christians would get very overwrought. The Temple Institute would slaughter the poor creature and burn its carcass in an elaborate ceremony, which they do intend to do. Then its ashes would be mixed with water and bottled and set to sit somewhere to wait for the rest of the conditions for the construction of the temple to be met. So that's interesting. Now I'm wondering, to purify all the Jews worldwide, would they be selling this purifying mixture that's bottled to Jews that live in other countries? That would be an interesting thought. So maybe that's what they mean by letting it sit until these other things are fulfilled. But they say that they need this in order to build the temple. The Aberdeen Angus, sometimes simply called Angus, is a Scottish breed of small beef cattle and derives from cattle native to the counties of Aberdeen, Banff, Kincardine, and Angus in northeastern Scotland. In 2018, the breed accounted for over 17% of the beef production in the United Kingdom. So the truth is that King Charles III is a patron of this breed of cows in Scotland. He gives them funds to help develop and produce and breed these red cows. So if these 5 from Texas don't cut the mustard, could the king produce one or have those that are caring for the cattle to provide one for them. This is a very interesting angle to think about. And keeping that heritage of the Scottish Aberdeen Angus cattle, to keep that herd going, you know, that's one of King Charles III's ties to Scotland, to keep that heritage alive. Now, incredibly, there's actually a video of these cattle breeders in northern Scotland breeding the Scottish Angus cattle. And they're all talking about the emissions of the cattle and what they can do about it and how they produce methane and how it affects climate change. So they're already mulling all of that over up there. And God protect his cows. The Lord said, the cattle on 1,000 hills are mine. That's because he's the rightful king, the rightful heir to those cattle. But another king is a patron of these cattle. And what if a red heifer is produced from his patronage of this special herd? I wouldn't put it past him. And there is a video about all of that with the Angus and the climate change and all of that. It's titled, How the Home of Aberdeen Angus is Hoping to Solve Meat's Big Emissions Problem. So they have the aberdeenangus.co.uk website, and this is the Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society that King Charles III is a patron of. And it says all the essential breeder resources from the Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society, the world's premier beef breed and brand. And I would like to read this little bit of this Debunking Doomsday from Quora.com. And it says, a short summary, it's nothing to worry about and it's meaningless. There are many red cows in the world. The Aberdeen Angus is a breed that has red hair. Jews have also raised many red cows, that's the red Angus, in Israel in the past. He says, a minority of Jews want to resume animal sacrifices on the Mount as a way to bring about world peace in their view. The Red Heifer Project is part of this aim. However, the current political situation only permits reenactments outside the Mount, not the actual sacrifice. So they don't count unless they're on the Mount. So the moral of the story is Israel's been trying to bring these red Angus cows over there, these red heifers that, you know, are genetically part of the Aberdeen Scottish Red Angus, and developing them there in Israel. They brought the 5 red heifers over to Israel for the purpose of breeding them. And if one is ready by next Passover, they will use that one as their purification method. However, if they develop these hairs and they should need another red heifer, I'm sure that the king would oblige them through this cattle society that's in Scotland. So it's something to ponder, something to think about, how he's way more involved in this really, truly unique breed of cattle. Some are red, some are black, but nevertheless, he could be very interested in participating in that ceremony because of this reason. If the red heifers are genetically a descendant of the Scotland Aberdeen Red Angus cattle. So I could see how, you know, the rabbis would invite him to participate They have said that it was the Messiah that was going to perform the sacrificial ceremony. Whether he would do it himself is a question, because they probably have a priest doing it, but he would be an invited guest, likely. So if it is a one-time world event that's going to take place after all of these thousands of years of not having one to purify the Jewish people, they said for 2,000 years that all of the Jews have been impure because of it. And of course, they don't buy the truth of the scripture that says that the Messiah was the better fulfillment of those things. So he's the one that purifies them from, being unclean and impure. That's why the Gentiles could be made clean through the Messiah. And that's why we gravitate towards him, because that's our way to enter, directly to speaking to him, to the Holy of Holies, because we're purified through the Messiah and the blood that he shed. So, and he's the living water as well. So there you have the blood and the water. And this is what the disciples saw when they pierced his side with the spear. Blood and water came out, thus testifying. There are three that bear witness on the earth: the blood, the water, and the spirit, and three that testify in heaven: the blood, the water, and the spirit. So this is showing you that the people are purified through the blood and water of the Messiah. And when the disciples saw it, they were astonished. And they knew what it meant. But since we're not living back then, we're not understanding it. But he is the fulfillment, the superior purifying source than the red heifer. So they're going to accept this red heifer as their purification. And people are going to be seeing this as a miracle, sign, and wonder, because for 2,000 years they've been considered ritually impure, unable to perform the temple service. And until they do this, they think that they will not be able to build the temple and not be able to, perform their duties within this third temple. The idea of rebuilding the temple themselves before the Messiah returns, and then going so far as to sacrifice animals in it, even without the Messiah, it goes against the teachings of most rabbis. The Jews who want to do this sort of thing are regarded as an extremist minority, phrase used to describe them in the Jerusalem Post. So this would be... it says they also think of what they are doing as working towards peace. It's only one heifer, they argue, that will die, and many are killed for meat every day, and this one heifer's death, they believe, will help bring about universal peace. This is the most important phrase right here, though. A fringe group of extremist rabbis wants to resume the biblical practice of animal sacrifice at Jerusalem's Temple Mount, members said, defying centuries of religious bans and triggering a stiff protest from a Muslim leader. The group, called the Reestablished Sanhedrin, after the Temple-era religious high court, has decided to buy some sheep and try to find one that is ritually perfect for sacrifice, with an eye towards resuming the practice. The 71 members of the Reestablished Sanhedrin say they want to begin sacrificing animals again, despite the absence of the temple. The ritual altar and all the required implements, as we know, listed in the Bible. Rabbi Dov Stein of the group admitted that it won't be anytime soon. We want to do the sacrifice, but we have a political problem. So this was written quite a while ago, I believe, when they were first making the pieces for the use in the temple. And some other rabbis say that moving in that direction is not progress. So is it any wonder that Yeshua told those leaders that were the Sanhedrin members, who warned you, brood of vipers, to flee from the wrath to come? And is the wrath going to be poured out on these people because of them not accepting him as the better purification? So all of these things are very interesting. If they set King Charles III as their king through becoming members of the Commonwealth, which all they have to do is apply, then, you know, they would be excited if the king helped them in any way with the red heifer, with the, you know, Scottish Aberdeen Angus. So here's another section of the story that you really need to ponder, kind of letting us know who this person likely is going to be, and a warning from the Lord, and for people to get their house in order, put their shoes on straight, and you know, just know that these things are coming to pass before our eyes. And this is just one more amazing bit of information about King Charles III, the keeper of the cows, the one who makes cows cry, and his connection to this red heifer, the red Angus, and it having the connection to the Scottish Aberdeen red Angus in Scotland. That is the world-renowned cattle herd. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you can, please support my work on this channel. I'm just saying, you know, a lot of work goes into these